Hey there, everyone. It looks like something is happening. Welcome. If you're new, I'm Cassandra from CassandraTindall.com, and I'm really happy to be joining you for a bit of an eclipse live stream. So I thought, what a better time to test out this technology um, than a Mercury station under an eclipse to check in with you all and see how you're going. So this is a very unplanned stream. So the chance to notify you all that I was going to do this wasn't possible because I only decided to do it about 5 minutes ago. But I wanted to perhaps just do something different on this channel, and also just give you all an opportunity to perhaps ask some questions or share your experience with this eclipse energy. So in my location on the globe, it's about 12:40 p.m. And so the eclipse is starting to really build. We've got about another few minutes within the hour. We're going to see that eclipse take shape. So eclipses do tend to be periods of time that a lot of astrologers do speak to the idea of an eclipse being a disruption to the usual patterns. And yes, that's true. So every 2 weeks or so, we have either a new moon or a full moon. And that is very much night and day, right? We can definitely rely on those happening. When an eclipse happens, something a little bit different is happening from an astronomical perspective, and that is the sun and the moon and the earth are aligning on the same plane. So not only is the lunation taking place at the same zodiacal degree, but it's also happening in a perfect alignment. So even though these eclipses are, well, all eclipses are disruptions to what we normally experience, there's something about them that I also wonder, to what extent are they disruptive? And yes, they're most definitely that. So everything that I'm saying sounds very contradictory, but there's something very powerful about an eclipse from the standpoint that being in this perfect alignment, the lunation speaks more, excuse me, I think I've got cat hair. The lunation speaks more vividly. It speaks more purely. And when the sun and the moon and the earth are forming an alignment, that channel of energy is very dynamic. And so because it's different in of itself, this is sometimes can bring a reduction of energy, vitality, and a lot of those kind of wiped out type of energies. So this eclipse is forming at 29 degrees of Aries. So it's at the very last moments of the sun's time in that sign. And so it's at the 29th degree or 29 degrees of Aries. And this is described as the anaretic degree. And the eclipse, any eclipse forming at this particular degree is always going to have a more fated or a sort of that karmic quality to it. The reason being is that the anaretic degree is often described as, the fated degree or the killing degree as well. YouTube might nab me for that word, but hey, I'm talking astrology. And what that means is that it is the endings, okay? It's the ending of that, the ending, the ending of the Aries season. And so there's something about being in between two worlds when we're at the last degree of a sign. There's something about being in between worlds where we're in an eclipse. So there's a lot of this energy that is very liminal. Okay, so not only do we have this all happening at the end, we also have in such short succession is that the moon, moments after the eclipse, will slip into Taurus. A few hours later, the sun will slip into Taurus. So in other forms of astrology, aka electional astrology and horary astrology in particular, when we have the moon moving swiftly and connecting sort of planetary energies together, it is said to be a translation of light. So this eclipse, while yes, it does happen in Aries, it translates light into Taurus. Okay, so it is a true essence, in a sense, of this hybrid division or this hybrid energy, because while the eclipse is happening in Aries, the node of the moon, the north node of the moon, is still in Taurus. So we're straddling we're getting introduced to the new season of the next couple of years of eclipses in the Aries Libra axis. So of course, it's going to be the Aries Libra houses of your birth chart that we're getting a introduction to today, as we start to close or wind down the cycle that we've just had, that really began with that first lunar eclipse in Taurus back in November 2021. So eclipses do happen in in cycles that are very regular. So if you're starting to wonder, okay, well, what could I expect from this? Obviously, look to your Aries house. That's going to tell you a lot about where you can start to feel this energy of openings, new potentiality coming through. I mean, ultimately, this is a new moon, okay, fresh starts, new beginnings. It's in Aries, which does have this very initiating quality, wanting to start something. And it's also closely aligned with Jupiter. So there's a lot of qualities about this new moon that you might be impatient or chomping at the bit to start something new, to get a project off the ground, to launch forward into some kind of passion or project that you're wanting to start. One thing that eclipses really do symbolize is the idea, and I wrote a blog post about this on my website yesterday, of one door close. My mum used to say all the time, one door closes, another door opens. And while that is often ideal in a linear fashion, for those who study astrology, we know that time is not linear, and in fact, it's circular. And then when we look at some of the life situations that we all would have been in at various times, often we don't get the opportunity to fully close a door on something before we can start the next thing. Classic example is we usually, all things being equal, we would like to secure a new job, a new role, or a new pathway professionally before we hand in our resignation to our existing position. Of course, there might be situations where that doesn't always happen and you're in a bit of a limbo, but in an ideal situation, it's good to have something lined up, that door opened before you close the door on the other thing, right? Another example is oftentimes we might get ourselves in these messy type of situations where we are, on a rocky road with a current partner and things aren't going so well, and you meet somebody else that might perk your interest. And then, there's that sort of messy liminal space between one thing started without fully closing something else down. So, there's thousands of examples, well, maybe not thousands, but several examples I'm sure we've all experienced about this kind of, liminal space of endings and beginnings. And this being a hybrid eclipse, the idea of the lunation taking place in one sign, but the node being in another, it's this kind of crossover period where those doors closing and ending. It's like, oh, but I want to launch forward into this. I want to do that. But, the Taurus node is going, no, you got to finish or complete what you've started. So there might be that sort of frustration here about a new beginnings, new hope, fresh enthusiasm. But no, I can't start, XYZ project until I finish the ABC one. So if you've got any questions about eclipses, you want to share an experience, please feel free to jot that down in the chat. What house it might be for you. Have you experienced anything in particular thus far? It's really normal to feel lethargic, spaced out, a little bit, not quite yourself when the eclipse energy really peaks. And that's because we've got that pure line of energy between the lights. And in addition to that, when we look at the visible component of astrology, which I think is so fundamental to, analyzing what this means, we can look at the sign, we can look at the ruler, we can look at planetary aspects. But ultimately, what's happening here is the light of the sun, which is constant, which is, all source of life. So many things about the sun, that warmth and radiance and that essential light is for a period of time being temporarily blocked by the light of the moon. So we are literally, for a very brief period, losing light. There is something that is blocked. There's something that is shadowed. There's something that is seen, then unseen, and then seen again. And so that space where things are dark is where, as generally as humans, we feel a little bit uncomfortable. And not just humans, we see that in all nature. When I woke this morning to do a little bit of meditation, the birds were just not as vibrant this morning. So they know what's up. And considering that this eclipse, its totality will be the most visible in the western the western portion of Australia and up into parts of Indonesia. So, I think the birds here know that something is coming up. So there is that idea of the light being the light of the sun, which tends to be more yang, more perhaps masculine in its energy. It is very constant and stable. And a very clear line of sight. Okay, it's like night and day. When something's night and day, we're really describing that the distinctions are very clear, right? Then the moon, that more chaotic, feminine, softer light, is blocking the moon. So there is something about a solar eclipse in particular that feels very that more yang focus is a little bit less of an influence. And it's about perhaps tapping into intuition, tapping into the emotions, into the feelings of things, into the stuff that kind of doesn't make sense, but somehow the feeling feels kind of right. Now, to sort of double down on that, another way that we can interpret some of what the eclipse might mean for us is the ruler of the eclipse, which in this case is Mars in Cancer. So Mars in Cancer is classically considered to be in its fall. So it's not really equipped with the resources to go out and do martial things, textbook on paper. I have done a video on some of the more positive attributes of Mars in Cancer. So there's definitely good qualities about it. But just from a pure discernment, functionality, technical astrology, it's basically not well equipped to go out and, face the day and do the things. It's more action determined on mood, action determined on feelings. And so under this eclipse, as you may feel the impetus or the desire to inject some fresh energy, some hope, some optimism, and come on, let's just get into this new eclipse cycle already. There's this push forward, but Mars in Cancer is sort of saying, oh, but what about my memories, or what about my feelings, or what about those tender points or those trigger points that I don't want to leave a comfort zone, or I don't want to leave my sort of protection and safety. Now, interestingly enough, in my Golden Circle membership, we did a Q&A call last night, and this was kind of a common theme that we discussed was, different members want to launch forward in certain areas of their life, but feel that that space between what I want to do, what my desires are, versus what is a little bit safe or familiar or comfortable. And Mars makes a square by a whole sign to this eclipse. So there is something about wanting to strike out or launch forward, but the safety of the shell might be holding you back. Now, what I do like about the potentiality of this eclipse is the ability to be able to sever, cut away from those memories that are holding you back. Maybe it's some of the narratives. Maybe it's some of the tender feelings that, at some point in time, okay, well, we felt the feelings, we got to move on. One of my astrology friends, she sent me a funny meme on Instagram yesterday. I love getting memes. And it must have been a Chinese restaurant or something like that by the font. And it said, and the words were spicy memory. And the caption at the top was, you call it trauma, I call it spicy memory. That just cracked me up. So, this eclipse might tenderize some of those spicy memories. What are those things that are holding you back from progress? Greetings from Colorado. I'd love to go to Colorado. I nearly did, but the recent 3 years prevented me from speaking at that conference. Libra ascendant, and I became a widower during the Pluto Capricorn transit 2 years ago. I'm really sorry to hear that. I am moving to a rural, isolated abode after 17 years to inside Fort Collins. I'm not certain where Fort Collins is, but that definitely sounds, moving somewhere rural and isolated. And if you've got the Libra ascendant, this is happening in your seventh house, this eclipse. And of course, Mars in Cancer is, carving out a new life direction for you, or a new pathway, or a new way forward. Hi, Cassandra. This eclipse falls in my second house. So Pisces rising, awoke to someone having thrown a pot of yellow paint on I thought you were going to say a pot of gold for a moment, because I'm just thinking second house, this is going to be a money question. Awoke to someone having thrown a pot of yellow paint, and I'm applying far out. I'm so sorry to hear that. That's probably going to ruin your car. Yeah, I do recall you telling me one time that you weren't living in an area you really liked. And so I guess that is, having your property vandalized. Sometimes, this eclipse, not by whole sign, but as I mentioned before, the lights, the sun and the moon move so quickly after this eclipse into a new sign. That idea of translation of light. The sun in Aries and the moon, even at 29 degrees of Aries, is still so tightly configured to squaring Pluto. And then, of course, they move into Taurus so quickly afterwards and then perfect that square. And so this is sometimes going to bring up that sort of tension point of, okay, I'm done with a certain situation. And I know I've sort of noticed a lot of astrologers talking about the Pluto piece, but I guess me with a little bit more of a traditional leaning, it's the Mars in Cancer piece. It's not until you get so emotionally uncomfortable, irritated, frustrated with a situation, you realize it's time to change. When things are all dandy and happy, there's nothing to change, right? But when we get sort of very uncomfortable with something, and Mars is kind of provoking this eclipse through a square, there is a lovely mutual reception between Mars and Jupiter. So Mars is in Cancer, and it looks to, it's got reception with Jupiter in Aries, and Jupiter has reception with Mars because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So there is the compromise, or the tension is there, but there is potentiality. Okay, it's almost like in some ways having to get over yourself, if that doesn't sound too awful. in order to make something happen. It's like the idea of the power of decision, the power of like, I'm done with this and I'm going to cut, sever, move forward with it, which is, a little bit Pluto as well. Sometimes we do have to face that proverbial dragon or that proverbial, dark period before we realize, yeah, I'm so done with this. So hopefully you get a breakthrough with that. That would be really great. I love your insights and channel. Thank you. Eclipse falling in my 8th, and I have the North Node at 29 Aries, and I'm taking it as it comes. So yeah, like for you, this is a nodal return energy. So look, this will be a nodal opposition for me. So we're kind of on a similar pathway there. So I think, this next 2 years is probably going to bring, and this is something that I see in all eclipse cycles, and the idea of this liminal space, this idea between worlds where things, I see this, I speak to this with clients all of the time, and it seems to always resonate, is this idea that it may be a plan, a goal, an idea, or a concept, or something that you have in your mind, and you might think, 3 to 5 years, but it happens in 18 months to 2 years. Eclipses have the capacity to speed up events, to make outcomes quicker, faster, because of this perfect alignment. I think that's kind of what it's about. So the lights are speaking very purely, very directly to us. So things can happen really quickly. So when it's coming through sort of 8-second stuff, it could be so much about your finances, value, how you value yourself, your skills, your gifts, what you have to offer. And also the financial entanglements. It may not even be financial. It could be the emotional entanglements that you share with other people. All right. So I found out today that one of my favorite co-workers is leaving our team. There also seem to be drama brewing with one of my professional partners, but I'd already planned to take leave for the week. Oh, that's frustrating, isn't it? Obviously, you haven't mentioned the houses there to kind of like, is it the eclipse kind of playing out a lot directly with this 1st, 7th stuff? But sometimes we can see co-workers a little bit in the 11th, the 11th being our house of friends, networks and groups, and also next to that professional house there as well. So it's annoying when people mess, not that I've experienced that for quite some time, maybe since the last time we had eclipses in this cycle, actually, but sort of being told what to do via people who really are in no position to tell you what to do. So yeah, that's really annoying. It's happening in my 4th house of Aries and wishing to get pregnant. I'll just wait for Jupiter and Taurus. You'll be fine. Okay, so Jupiter moving through your 5th house or your 1st house is often, big pregnancy signatures. Obviously, there's more than just 2 years out of 12, but those are ones I see a lot. So one way I describe the eclipse, and to sort of throw back to the blog post I wrote, which is available on my website, CassandraTindall.com, I'm a huge fan of shows like The Last Kingdom. And of course, last week I watched the 7 Kings Must Die movie. And I thought to myself, are these Netflix people like really clued into eclipse cycles? Because one thing that is very traditionally linked to eclipses is the idea of solar figures, whether that be, a king, a president, or CEO, some kind of leader, solar figure. Often, something happens under an eclipse because their light is getting blocked. There's plenty of examples in the ancient writings that speak of that. And so this movie's released, 7 Kings Must Die. And I was like, no, not interested. Although, obviously that's probably inevitable. But anyway, I don't want to give it away, even though there's not much to give away, because it's not the show itself doesn't give it away. So I don't, it's a bit of a spoiler alert, press the mute button if you don't want to know. But the final scene was so eclipsy. So you have Uhtred, who's injured and rises from the bed, and he's speaking to his kin, his close people in his castle, Mars in Cancer, Mars the warrior in his castle with his most near and dear. And then he walks, he hears this noise. He walks into another part of the room, and he opens this door, this imaginary door, and there's this kind of like dream sequence where he is moving into the great hall, like Odin's hall in Valhalla. And then there's these images of all of the people that he has loved and lost throughout his life. And so this was so cinematically beautiful and very descriptive of the eclipse, of this idea of being two worlds, to launch forward into destiny, which is a big part of the show too, but to launch into destiny, which is very much the hope of a new moon in Aries aligned with Jupiter, closely configured to the North Node. The North Node and Jupiter are 2 points in the sky that we can really lead to exaggeration, amplification, and sort of making things bigger. So there's that forwardness, or that opening into new possibilities. But in order to take that leap forward, we've got that square to Mars in Cancer, the memories, the past, the familiar, the family, the tenderness. And it's difficult, right? And, you can see the pain in his face because he doesn't know whether to succumb and go to Valhalla or stay with his people in his castle. And so I really do think that makes a really pivotal, beautiful metaphor for the energy that we're moving into now, because this eclipse and its ruler are forming that square. So there's that tension. What do I have to cut or sever or make some kind of peace with in order to move forward? So this is the liminal space, this kind of a tunnel or portal that we're moving into as we move into this solar eclipse. And then in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to have the lunar eclipse in Scorpio, which will also be ruled by Mars in Cancer. There's a lot of eclipses in this Aries Libra season that look to Mars in Cancer. Oh, the joy. So, look at your houses in your birth chart, right? What are which is the Aries house, which is the Cancer house, and how is something about these two houses locked in a bit of a stalemate? I want to stay familiar, but I want to launch forward, but then I have to cut something or someone. Or a situation. It might be the way you feel about something is actually what's preventing you from moving forward. I know this is a little bit of a personal bias, I suppose, but I think there's such a power in decision. Whether you know the way forward, whether you don't, that's for the gods to decide, right? Or the stars, or whatever your belief system is. But if you don't take a step forward, you can guarantee you're not going anywhere. And I think that's something about this eclipse that's important to remember. It is a new moon in Aries with Jupiter. And, there is a launch forward that's available, but anything worth having does come with risk. And of course, Mars in Cancer is a little risk shy. So let's have a few minutes just reading some comments and questions here. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for being here. Really appreciate, you spending some time with me on this very impromptu, I should say, visit. Thanks for speaking to the situation. I definitely relate to the sense of the push between desire and changes and the comfort. Yes. So the paint was the omen to get moving. I mean, it's your car. Get moving, girlfriend. For sure. I think that's definitely it. And I do, we have a little bit of a history in terms of readings. So yes, it's maybe that's the thing for you for sure, is to take that risk. The drama will have to resolve itself or wait. The drama, yes, with your leave situation. Oh, I feel the frustration. I have the South Node in Aries in my 11th house, so that would annoy me so badly. Advice for Cap risings. Cap risings and Aquarius stellium. Well, Cap rising, this is going to be your 4th house. I don't necessarily see that the Aquarius stellium is necessarily going to be making a massive difference. When we're looking at eclipses, there's a couple of points on this. Firstly, the houses are really going to tell you what the themes are, because the eclipses follow the nodes. The nodes are always in opposition to each other. Eclipses are going to activate an axis, 11th house, 5th house, 8th house, 2nd house. That's unavoidable. So, reflect on that. Look at what happened in sort of 214, 215, when the eclipses were last on this axis. 2005, 6-ish was the last time we had the same series of eclipses then. So how did the house topics in your chart, how did they get affected, changed, shifted during that period of time? And that's going to give you some insight as to what you can expect now. It's the 4th house, foundation, family, heritage, setting a foundation. The 4th house is very foundational, and there's something about getting that right sets a solid foundation from which everything else in the chart can spring from. So this series may be more about that, a little bit more in that area of your life, as opposed to the 10th house. Can you please say something about Aries eclipse in the 9th house? I really do like this axis being eclipsed. I think is very much about spiritual practice, finding a pathway of meaning, purpose, whether that is through travel, whether that's through study, whether that's through a spiritual or religious type of situation. I actually have a video on my YouTube channel that it's a lecture or a webinar that I gave for Nightlight Astrology. We recorded it with Adam, and I uploaded it to my YouTube so everyone can access that. You scroll down, it'll be there somewhere, Houses of Meaning and Purpose. And that might give you a lot of insight as to what the eclipses can bring. I really love the 3rd and 9th houses. And when I see a client with nodes in this house, some type of, religious, magical, spiritual, esoteric, magical existence must happen for them. If that's not happening in your life, then this eclipses might be a call to bring something magical into your life. Whether that's just meditating more, whether that is committing to finishing a degree. For some people, that's what it's going to be. Maybe you'll go back to school and get a PhD in something. Maybe you decide, I'm sick of just like reading blogs and watching YouTube. I'm going to learn astrology with somebody. I also do have a new enrollment for my program on June 7, if you're interested. But, that's the idea, right? It's about really devoting yourself in daily practice, the 3rd house, into something that keeps you spiritually connected in the 9th. I love 9th house activations. They just unlock something really magical for people. So hopefully that's what you can expect with this eclipse series. Again, look back to 2014, 19, 14, 15, and again 2005, 6. were the last times we had eclipses throughout the Aries and Libra. Even though, they reverse every 9 years, the same houses are becoming active. So it's kind of same, but different. Okay, so I'm just going to have a quick look throughout the comments. There's nothing more to really discuss at this point. So in terms of just some basic tips is generally speaking, with an eclipse, it's not ideal to do any type of ritual work, magic, spells, anything of the nature. It really is a time to rest, to cleanse, to just, some people may not like to, people, friends of mine who are, wonderful magicians of various lineages, fast. They do spiritual fastings. I have too many planets in Taurus. I don't fast. I refuse. I'm always thinking about my next meal. And so I personally don't do that. And I think it's also important to factor in how nodal are you. Not every person is, it's like eclipse, whatever. It's not necessarily going to impact you. What qualifies as a nodal chart? Okay, if you have a node conjoined a luminary, that's going to be a big one. If you're born on an eclipse, of course, that's going to be a big one. Or if you have a node conjoined an angle or conjoined, the ascendant ruler. Those are pretty much your, tick the boxes if you are a nodal person. I do find that nodes, so if you've got the north node more of an influence, then eclipses tend to be more regenerative and exciting. If you are a south nodal type, then it's generally a time to really be mindful of your vitality, of your personal energy, maybe lie low, a little bit of a isolated or introspective quality. Because also remember, the moon is in charge under a solar eclipse. So it is about the body. It is about the emotions. It's about the physicality and just resting so you can perhaps receive those messages or, what she has to say. And as Westerners, I'm sure for the most part, people are watching from the West, we don't do that enough. And so the eclipse is a call to do that and to be guided by the things that maybe don't make rational sense, don't make any real logic. We do have Mercury stationing, so put logic out the window. Here's me doing a live stream on YouTube for the very first time without warning or any type of practice, but it seems to have been working. So maybe I'll do this a fraction more often. I hope you enjoyed this. I do wish you all the best for the eclipse. Obviously, we're entering the portal. Events don't always happen on the day. More often than not, they don't. We're opening up a chapter now. And just like any good book or any good TV show, sometimes it takes a while to get going, right? The season has started, but it won't be until you get attached to a couple of characters where you start to, follow those plot lines. So it's, you've got a season of shows and, some seasons are peak seasons. Other seasons, it's like a bit of a filler season. So as the eclipses roll through, in the Aries Libra houses, it's your Aries Libra Netflix show. And then some seasons, which when the eclipses happen, is when we get some peak storylines in those areas of life. So this is, but the first one, it's the hybrid eclipse. We are out of, the lunation happens outside of the node. So it's like the support act when you go see a band, no one's really paying attention. And but we get into, just setting the vibe, setting the tone of the night. So hopefully that's given you some insight. Do rest, eat light if that feels right for you. It's great for meditation, reflecting, gathering your thoughts, understanding, maybe what's holding you back, what emotions are holding you back. So this one does have a little bit of a chaotic, emotional quality. You might find the energy rises and falls. One moment you're happy and feeling full of life. The next minute you feel like you're hit by a bus. That's the nature of what we're moving into. So once again, thank you so much for joining me. If you do like discussing astrology with me and learning more, this is what I do all of the time in my Golden Circle membership. I'll pop a link in the description or what have you, where you can have a look and see what's on offer there. That is definitely the best place to find all things astrology there with me. So once again, thank you so much. Enjoy the eclipse as much as one can enjoy an eclipse. Take it easy, rest, and just honor whatever it is you need to feel, do, and process at this time. So until next time, I look forward to catching you then.